You've got questions?
We've got answers.
Tune in Tuesdays at noon on Facebook Live and Insta Live, where we will be hosting a variety of subjects with our community experts.
Hi, this is Annette Tello. I hope you'll join us next Tuesday when the conversation will be about sex and the survivor. It should be a fun and interesting conversation.
See you there. We have a very special guest that we have had the pleasure of talking to, and now you're going to get the pleasure of talking to, and that is Annette Tello. She's an MS. She is a counselor. She is a cancer survivor specialist, life coach, author, artist. She's had her own journey with cancer. She specializes, I write this all down, this woman is amazing. She specializes in working with cancer patients and survivors. She helps survivors move forward in their lives with her signature personalized programming. She's all about the individual, called Thriving After Surviving. And there's a lot of subjects that we plan on getting her for this month, and we're excited. But right now, today, it's going to be about a very sensitive subject that we're going to make fun and light. And that is sex and the survivor. But before we dig in with Miss Annette, which we're really excited, and we go deep, Michelle, do we have any housekeeping that we need to do?
We always have housekeeping.
I know we do.
About the housekeeping. And I'm going to share the screen with everyone who's out there, because all of the information that you're going to hear and see today with Annette is on our Beautiful Self website. So if you go to our website, you'll see our homepage, and then we have an outreach and education tab where you see Annette's name, and right there it's all about Annette. It's her calendar if you wanted to book an appointment with Annette, and if you have questions that you might not want to ask here, there's a private Ask Annette tab as well. And then there's also a link to her book, which is on Amazon. And you know, we are on Amazon Smile and all sorts of social sites that you can tap into our information, and that we would love to share with you and to give you direct links.
Awesome.
Without further ado,
shall we?
Let's ask
Annette. Hi, Annette.
Hi, how are you?
We're doing great. Thank you so much. We can't tell you how much we appreciate you being here and being so open and ready to talk to us for the entire month, and our tribe out there, our community of survivors and supporters. So I'm going to get right into it, because I know we're going to have a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Great
Thank
talk.
you.
Is that cool?
Cool.
Okay, here we go. I already see a lot of people have jumped on. So I'm going to open it with this. I have a lot of questions, so I'm going to be really tight on my questions. Okay, sorry. But it's about sex, so I got to know. So let me open with this. You know, menopause during and after is, I think, what really gives women a lot of our issues, especially when it comes to sex. So the answers that you're going to give are for supporters also. It's not just for survivors. It's just for those of you that are supporters. The difference is that while the natural stream of menopause takes time, with cancer treatment, especially in ovarian, cervical, and breast cancer, it attacks the feminine psyche because we are forced into menopause at much younger ages than we should be. And it happens really quick, but yet you're left with all the afterthoughts of it, you know, the what happens to the body. And we can't take the hormones that would help us ease into it. So that's the difference. But it's the same destination, we're just different speeds getting there, right? So that is now I'm going to go into my question. So I just wanted to let the supporters know this is for them too. So here's the thing. All right. Sex, you know, I know it has such an emotional component to it, but it really does stem, Annette, from physical frustrations that we face after menopause as survivors. And this is a broad question, but to get us going, how do we even begin to start to tackle our frustrations?
Well, I think it's important that we understand and we educate ourselves on our own sexual response. And for most of us, it's been a long time since we had sex education. So there's so much information out there that's really helpful. And when I work with women, I use a dual control model. And the dual control model states that when you're having a sexual activity or you have sexual arousal, it's governed by the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system, just like everything else in your body. So the sympathetic nervous system is your accelerator. And so if you want to rev up your sex life, you need to have more sexually relevant stimuli, right, to rev that up. But at the same time, you're maybe starting to get aroused. You also have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your brake system. And so the brake system, you know, if you think our ancestors, if you had arousal, but if you were in a situation where you're in danger, it's going to shut that down, right? So it's a survival mechanism. But unfortunately, in this day and age, our brake system has less to do about sex and has more to do about our mental state of mind, our emotional state, our external factors. It has to do with religion, our beliefs of our body image. It has to do with your relationship with your partner. How do you feel about your partner? Are you in a trusting relationship? Do you feel safe with them? So our brakes are activated at the same time that our arousal is activated. And if there's a bell curve when it comes to sexual sensitivity. So we all have the brake and the accelerator, and it falls within a brake curve, like a bell curve. And so most of us fall in the middle where we have an average sensitive brake and an average sensitive accelerator. But then on each end, there's extremes. And a lot of women have a very sensitive brake. And so when you're working with your accelerator and you're starting to get aroused, there's two different types of desire. One is called spontaneous desire. The other one is called responsive desire. Like most men have spontaneous desire, which I think all of us understand. You know, man can see a picture of a naked woman and he's aroused. But women don't work that way. At least I think 10% of the population of women can have spontaneous desire. But for the rest of us, we have responsive desire. And so what that means is it's a continuum. So when you see sexually relevant stimuli, you start to have your desire perked and then engaged, but then it takes you a long time before you get to the point where you want to activate and take it further, right? Mm-hmm. So it takes a while to warm up the oven. Mm-hmm. And during that whole time, you have plenty of time for the brakes to come in. So, so mm-hmm. that's what women need to understand. Mm-hmm. So most of us have responsive desire, so we have a long time to put the brakes on many times. And so a lot of it, in order to understand your own libido or lack of libido, is you have to understand what activates your brakes, right? And so if you can reduce those things that activate your brakes, you're more likely to get, into arousal and desire and then have your libido, lit up. So you want to increase things that stimulate your gas pedal and then decrease or eliminate those things that put your brakes on.
I think before I get to the next question, because you said something that's going to lead me into the next question. I love what you said about, I've never heard it put that way before with the mm-hmm. brakes.
Yeah.
And let me know if this is right, because I would say that for survivors, the brakes are, penetration hurts. My vagina doesn't work the same. I'm not as attractive as I used to be. I had cancer. Like the brakes. Like we want to, right? But it's not the same acceleration pedal.
Right.
So are those the brakes that you're talking about, say, for a survivor, maybe?
Definitely. And it changes through your lifetime, because from puberty, after you give, you have childbirth, you give birth to a child, a lot of women feel like, okay, my body's different. And so you have to adjust to your new body. Your hormones are all over the place. So it's almost like, going through those different phases of being a woman. It's an adjustment and your body's always changing. And so, when I went through menopause, I had to adjust to that too. So I understand what what women are going through, because I went through it myself. But, of course, it's a natural process for me. And for other women, they have to adjust to it. And it's not easy. So
into it, being thrown into menopause.
Yes. And it's coming and you have time to get used to it. But one more thing I want to add about sexual response before we get into the next question is the other part of sexual response is context. So that's the circumstances surrounding the arousal. And so the content has to be right for the arousal to turn into desire. So what do I mean by that? Like, say you figure out what accelerates my gas pedal. Like, I like this and like that. You let your partner know this is what turns me on. So say one of the things you say is like, I love being kissed on my neck because it's, sends shiver down my spine. And so I love that. So your partner's like, great. I know, what can accelerate her, but you have to understand it has to be done within the correct context. So if you're in bed and you're cuddling and you're talking and your partner starts kissing you on the neck, that will arouse your desire. Mm-hmm. However, if you're in the kitchen and doing dishes because the dishwasher broke down and your partner comes and he starts kissing you on the neck, or, you're going to say, what are you doing? Like, leave me alone. And
get off of me.
Yeah. What are you told me you like that? I don't understand. So I just want people to know that once you understand what turns you on, you have to understand the context and the environment in which it can grow. So I just wanted to add that.
I love that. Would you also say, because I want to kind of wrap that up, because it was a really great answer. In wrapping that up, would you say, take a look at the brakes, what's putting the brakes on, and then deal with it. So if it's painful sex, go to your gyno, like figure it out, get the things you need. If it's an emotional block, see someone, talk about it. Would you say find ways to remove it? Okay.
Yes. And so that kind of leads us into like the lack of libido. So lack of libido is caused by many different things. And like the counseling I do, helping women, can definitely help increasing that, sparking that, rebooting your sex life. However, there are situations where it's because of the medications you're on, or hormone suppressants. Mm-hmm. Those things have to be dealt medically. Mm-hmm. And however, within that context, even if you have problems with like dryness and low libido because of the hormones, there's still things I can do to help you, like create that spark, to even like maybe move the meter over a little bit, where you can start to increase the libido. So yeah, it may not go back to where it was before you had cancer, but there's things you can do to actively kind of move forward, even though you have all those situations physically.
I love that. And that's why we want anyone that's watching us to personally reach out to Annette if you have questions on that.
I'd be happy to answer any questions and help, because there's so much more that we don't have time for. Right. And I have a lot of materials and worksheets that I can send you. So please, if you want more information, don't hesitate to contact me.
And we're going to put that up for you for sure, which leads me into the next question. As a nonprofit, Michelle and I have had the pleasure of speaking with hundreds and hundreds of survivors, if not thousands, I would say, through virtual, but in person, hundreds. And some of them say their partners are very understanding and very nurturing. Some of them, and then some of them take it very personal. This is a big one, that initial treatment's over, you're a year to 5 years out, and now what's wrong with you? Why don't you want me? Why aren't we back to where we were before cancer? And the partners also find it embarrassing, so they don't necessarily want their wife to be out there talking about it. So it's like this double-edged sword, because you're like, how am I supposed to talk to you about it? You won't let me talk to you're not understanding. So how do you have that conversation with a partner or a spouse that doesn't understand and finds the whole thing embarrassing?
Well, communication is key, of course. And the research shows that the biggest factor in sexual satisfaction for women who have had breast cancer, and this is 2 years after treatment is done, is communication. So the more you communicate, the higher the sexual satisfaction is for partners. So that is the key to a good sex life. And so I'm going to kind of go backwards and start with, what causes low libido, and then we're going to end again with communication. Okay. So as you know, lack of libido is caused by many things, and but what I want women to understand is that because sexual desire and libido is on a bell curve, that everyone is normal. So if you have a very sensitive brake system and therefore don't have a lot of sexual desire, that's normal. And I want women to not feel like there's something wrong with them, because that feeling and saying, well, I should be more, I should have my sexual libido back and I should do this, comes from a state of lack, and it comes from a state of something's wrong with me. And if you're coming from something's wrong with me, that creates stress, and that's going to kill your libido, because stress is a #1 factor for low libido, and it reduces sexual interest in 80 to 90% of the population. Okay.
Wow.
So the first thing is stop beating yourself up, because that's going to, from the get-go, you're going to be already killing whatever little libido that you have. And so the first thing is dealing with the stress, and then finding ways of discharging the stress hormones from your body. Because a lot of people say, well, just relax. But you can't relax if you have all these stress hormones. So you have to find what works for you. And it could be, maybe going for a walk or exercising. It could be having a good cry. There are breathing exercises that activate the relaxation response, and those are wonderful. And also, as you know, because of my book, that creative expression is a great way to reduce emotional pain and eliminate all that pent-up stress. So the first step is finding out what helps you to reduce the stress. So then once it's dissipated, then you can focus on, okay, now that my stress level is down, approach your lack of libido, not from a place, okay, what's wrong with me, I have to fix it, from a place of curiosity, okay? So doing that mind shift and saying, like, I wonder why my libido is so low. And there's no judgment, there's no stress in asking that question. You're just curious, like, before I had breast cancer, I had a great sex life with my partner, my husband. So from asking yourself these questions, like, so why is it low? Then you can, I have worksheets for this, but, basically is asking yourself, what's changed in my mindset? What's changed in the way I feel about my body? Like emotionally, what do I need to feel better? So when you come from this place of curiosity, it takes the pressure off of you, right? Yeah. And then you can be open up to creativity. Mm-hmm. And then you can be open to answers like, oh, there's something, what's putting on my brakes? And just, most of us don't consciously know what that is, right? If you haven't thought about it, it could be something as simple as like, well, I don't like to initiate, romance if you have bad breath, right? Mm-hmm. So just being conscious, like, oh, let your partner know, make sure you brush your teeth before you initiate, mm-hmm. Intimacy.
I love sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm really loving everything you're saying. And this break system is a phenomenal way of putting it into like context, like,
make it easy to understand.
It's easy to understand because honestly, Annette, I think what I see the most is, they say that comedians are usually have the most pain inside and that's how they deal with it. I think that it turns into a joke for so many of us, for survivors. It becomes like a joke of like the no libido. We just bucket it into this joke. But that is masking a desire that, that we still want to be how we were and now we're not. So we're just going to mask it with humor because that's what you do. And that adds to, I think, what you're saying, and it adds to those stress levels.
Yes.
Like it's not really funny at the end of the day. It's funny when you're with your own, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. So I like that partner and that stress.
Well, that's a very good point, Jillian, because historically, women's sexual response is based on men's sexual response. So historically, women should have spontaneous desire like men do. And historically, men don't have a very sensitive break. So their break, you have to do a lot to put a break on for a man. So they expect women, like, once your desire is sparked, what's the problem? There shouldn't be any breaks. And so that's why as women, we're always lacking, because sexually, we're always compared to the men's model of sexual response. And so I think that puts a lot of burden and heaviness, because women also have to deal with, like if you're younger, your reputation, getting pregnant, on top of everything else that men don't really have to deal with. And I think men don't understand that. And so part of the communication is, consciously bringing that to the forefront. Okay, what is putting my brakes on? And then, actively doing things to reduce that or eliminate it.
We have a question. We have a question that came in, a call-in question that says, what if my partner can't get over PTSD of cancer? I.e., he won't touch my breasts because they have been off limits for so long, or he's afraid to touch my boobs because they're not boobs.
That's fair.
They've been reconstructed from back and tummy flesh. So he's in that mindset.
Okay, so he's kind of traumatized by the whole experience, you know. Well, part of that, you know, if part of it could be going to, you know, sex therapy, because that's a, you know, there's things going on there for him. And the other thing is communicating him about, that's obviously a break for him. So communicating with them, okay, this is stopping you from going forward. So underneath that, you know, what's going on underneath, you know, so that's a very complicated thing. But also there's some therapeutic techniques that have been done in therapy where women and men, first of all, when it comes to sexual desire, like they start with touching each other. So you touch your partner for 10 to 15 minutes and then you do reverse. But first you just do it with clothing on. So basically it's finding out, like, you know, what parts of your body are sensitive to arousal other than the sexual organs. And then you do that for a couple of times. And then when you're ready, you move on to the next step, which is you touch without clothing, right? But you don't touch the bra or the underwear area. So you just touch the flesh with, you know, without the genital touching. And then the next one, you ease into touching the sexual organs. So for him is maybe touching her over her bra and letting get used to the feel. And then gradually to the next step, when he's ready, move on to the next step without, and just ease into it without activating the stress response. So this whole process is about, it's used for trauma. It's used for women who have gone through sexual trauma, where it's no pressure. And then, so the third time you're touching over, without the clothing, you're touching the genitals, but no penetration. And then the next step, when you're ready to move on, it's the full body experience, you know, with penetration and orgasm. But this is a very effective tool in therapy to help people move from a traumatic experience and it having them put their brakes on to just gradually, and it's all about, the goal is just pleasure, relaxing, trusting, and just finding out what other areas you like being touched, and not just focusing on the breast. So if he can take his focus off the breast and just gradually ease into it without that, you know, it triggering that stress response, that could probably help him.
Great answer. Yeah, I have a question that made me kind of, while you were talking, I kind of been jotting some things down. Do you think that as women in general, because I'm going to put in supporters, survivors, we're going to go into this nice little bucket here, that we put too much pressure on ourselves, that intercourse is the end game? And that if we, you know, like, I'm not comfortable here, so all this doesn't matter because I can't get here. Do you think that in general, we put so much pressure on the act of just the intercourse rather than the overall experience?
Definitely. And when you're recovering from something like cancer and the surgery, that's very traumatic. There's trauma held in the body. And so part of it is doing things to release that trauma, and maybe having some kind of body work done to release the trauma. But then the focus should really be on pleasure. So if you can shift your focus from, you know, I'm going to have an orgasm, I'm going to climax at the same time as my partner, that's a lot of stress. I mean, that's a lot of pressure for women.
Very stressful.
A lot of pressure.
That's a performance. Yeah.
That's based on the male model of sexual response. That's not based on the actual female response. So if you just take the intercourse off of the table, just saying, like this technique I was just talking about, it's just about how can we bring each other pleasure. If it later leads to where you want to have penetration, that's fine, but it doesn't have to go there because that's not the goal.
I love
so
that.
again, using this technique can help in that situation where if it leads there naturally and you're ready, go for it. If not, it's okay, because that's not the purpose.
Okay, fantastic. That's great. And another frustration, because Michelle, do you have a question?
No.
Okay. I love it. Another frustration that we hear from our single survivors, I want to kind of move over from those that are partnered up to our single survivors, is that they're out there dating. And how do they approach the fact that maybe they don't have breasts, their female parts don't rev up, they have no feeling in their nipples, you know, all the things that would normally work are different than the average gal. And when is it time in that dating period to have those intimate conversations, and how, how can they handle it being, and because I think a lot of them feel like they will be rejected.
Right.
So
So that's a great question. And part of it is knowing yourself and knowing when you're comfortable, because I see, definitely think like on your first date, this is not an appropriate conversation. Everyone is different. Everyone is different. So I wouldn't bring up that conversation until you're ready to take the relationship forward and you're ready to be intimate. And then that's the appropriate time to bring up, this is what's going on. And part of it is also using this conversation of telling the person what's going on with you physically. You can say, hey, I'm very interested in going further, but however, I just want to let you know I'm a breast cancer survivor. I had surgery, and this is what I look like. So just tell the person ahead of time what to expect. Mm-hmm. There's going to be scarring. I only have one breast. Just let them know ahead of time, and then let them ask questions, and then say, and if you're not comfortable showing your chest, you can just say, hey, I just wanted to let you know I prefer to have sexual intimacy with my bra on until I'm more comfortable. Is that okay with you? So let them know that, and then make that conversation part of your foreplay. So if you can be comfortable and make it fun and say, hey, I'm going to have my bra on because I'm not comfortable right now taking it off. So my sensitivity and my breasts are very limited, or I have no sensation. However, my inner thighs are very sensitive. Okay. What areas in your bodies you find particularly sensitive that you want me to touch? And so take that from your information and switch it over to, hey, this is what I like. What do you like? And that can be part of getting aroused, because you're talking about, what you like and maybe what you're going to do to him. And that can be a more fun, make it fun and playful, because it doesn't have to be such a serious and stressful situation. If you're uncomfortable, you're going to make them uncomfortable. So find a way, even if you have to practice in the mirror what you're going to say, practice in the mirror, like, hey, this is. So when it comes to the time, it's natural and it's easy, and that makes it easier for your partner.
Yeah, it's very interesting, because a couple of our girls who jumped in said it is a hard conversation to have. And yeah. I feel with, an amputee person, that usually you can see that amputee. So, going in, listen, I'm in or I'm out, right out of the gate, visually in or out. Right. But this amputated is a big reveal. It's like the big reveal 3 dates in, if you don't want to talk about it. So now you're feeling more personally rejected, because they were in up until you took your shirt off, which is stories that we've heard at Beautiful Self. And it's horrible, horrible. And so is there a way not to take that other person's crap on? The only way I can put it.
Oh, say like after you were rejected.
Yes. Like if you date someone for a couple of weeks and then they see that you're, maybe you're still fighting cancer. Maybe you've got no breasts. Maybe you can't have children. And they're like, I'm out, you know what I mean? And and I think some survivors take that on personally rather than letting it be the other person's crap.
And you know what I would say to them is this is advice that I got from a friend of mine who is a breast cancer survivor, and she started dating recently. And and when she tells men, if afterwards they decide, I'm not interested. So that's what it's better to tell them what they're going to see first. And if they're uncomfortable, they can back out then without you actually physically revealing yourself. So it's important ahead of time. This is what you're going to see. So you're not like naked when they're like, oh no, so you have that conversation. And if the man is uncomfortable and doesn't seem like to want to go further, it's good, because why would you want to be with a man that is in the long term is not going to be there for you? So that's why it's important to have that conversation. So it makes it easier for you and him. And it's like, okay, you're not comfortable. That's fine. I want to be with a man who loves me for every part of me. You're not that man for me.
Right.
And yeah.
Brilliant.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's brilliant. And you did also say, as we kind of head into closing, one of the things that you said that I thought was really interesting was that women that are single, that have had breast cancer related trauma, tend to be more comfortable long-term in the conversation rather than people who are kind of new to the conversation. It's like, it's a little more, almost like you have to get used to it in your own head, right?
It's an adjustment, definitely.
Interesting. It's interesting. So let me see if we have any yes, it is Victoria Rego. Thank you, Victoria. She's one of our wonderful supporters, survivors out there. She's also a Stay Flat. And you know what? Loving your body and Stay Flat. I salute all of you gals. I think it's just so awesome. Yeah, which kind of leads us into, I know that Annette, we're going to be speaking with you again, and we're going to be addressing next time really about more self-love and body image and pleasing yourself really in a way. So I just want to ask anybody if they have any questions about body image or self-love to please go ahead and start leaving them in, and we're going to pepper them into the next show. So Michelle, anything on closing before we say thank you to Annette and...
Wow.
I know, it was a great show.
I got a lot of great advice. But more importantly, on Annette's website too, she has all of these great worksheets that she can absolutely help you and guide you through to better navigate whatever questions you might have. And again, you can check out our website. All the links will be in this show, and we're really looking forward and thankful that Annette is going to be us for Self-Care September.
Yay! Do we have time for me to add one more point?
Yes,
of course.
I want women to know if your libido is low, that it's important to see yourself as a woman who loves having sex and a sexually active woman, because that shifts your mindset. And so if you're a woman who loves having sex, then you can ask yourself, hey, if I love having sex, you know, why aren't I making more time for this? Like, what can I do in my schedule to reduce time doing stuff with the kids and maybe spending more time with my partner or scheduling more time for dates? So if you see yourself as a woman who loves having sex, then you'll be thinking more about like, well, what turns me on? You'll be spending more time seeing yourself in that light, and that's going to lead to more sparking of the accelerator. So that's another part of it, is seeing yourself as a sexually vibrant woman who loves to have sex. And then
so live in the end result. You're saying live in it. I love that.
Use your fantasy. You know, find out what are your fantasies, your imagination, what sex toys you like. So the more time you spend thinking of yourself that way, the more time you'll be like, hey, being aroused, and then, you know, moving that libido a little bit forward.
I like that. It's almost when they say when you're on a diet and you're trying to get fit, don't think about what you're eating. Think about just the fit body that you're in.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
This is part of who you are, you know. And for some women, they don't want to be sexually active. That's okay. But if that's something that you want, then say, hey, I love having sex, and I'm going to do everything I can to increase that.
I love it. Annette, you're awesome. Thank you so much. Everyone, leave your questions. We're going to be back next week with Annette talking about body image. And as always, we want to send you off with our ending, which is stay strong, stay positive. You are beautiful. You are beautiful, tribe. And we'll see everybody next week. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.